Making this video is kind of sus, just because we don't know when the animated short is coming out. It could come out, in a couple hours, and it's like, well, that was unfortunate timing, but I don't have much else to talk about, so let's talk poetry. As some of you might know, I've written my fair share of poems for this channel. Now, as for whether they yield high praise, I dare not say. But before I start yapping, I should give some context. We are due for another animation very soon, as announced by Hoyo themselves, featuring both Aether and Lumine, and the title of the animation is The Road Not Taken, which is also the title of a very well-known poem by Robert Frost. Now, I imagine most of you read this poem in high school or some shit, and despite what my analytics tells me, I'm going to assume most of you are in high school, because this is some bullshit. And look, I get it, I was under 18 once too, and I lied. I lied when I had my old YouTube account. I said I was born when the fucking Triceratops still roamed the earth to make sure I got access to all the contents, but nigga. What is this? 4.7% of you are telling me, bro, 50% of you are not between the ages of 18 and 24. A third of you niggas are older than me. All right, bro, look, sure, I'm not doubting, there's some cultured older folk here among us, but guys, I respond to nearly all the comments, man. Either this is the loudest bunch of 4.7% on a pie chart I've ever seen in my entire life, there are a plethora of lying bastards among us, or some of us are not acting our age, man. Although, to be fair, I'm 23, which means, look, I'm pushing 30, which also means I'm really close to 50, and I love spamming the wing face, so I don't really have a leg to stand odds. I don't know, I just thought those numbers were wild, man. But back to The Road Not Taken. This is an interesting poem for a few different reasons. It's, first and foremost, an extremely popular poem, to say the least. I'm sure the phrase "the road less traveled" stems from it, and it's being used here with regards to Aether and Lumine, to travelers, could probably be meant to signify the roads they will and have taken on their journeys through Inteyvat. However, the most interesting thing about this poem, no doubt, is it's probably the most misunderstood poem. Alright, how do we want to do this, guys? We're gonna need to know the fucking poem, alright? So before we can move forward. We want to go English teacher routes. Maybe I'll just throw it up on the screen and we can just stare at it in silence. Maybe reflect on what we've read. It's fun. I'll fucking read it. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler long I stood, and looked down as far as I could, to where it's bent in the undergrowth, then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for the passing there, had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, and leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. Ah, lovely, isn't it? You guys ever had poetry day? I remember in college we had to recite a poem from memory in front of the class one day, and everyone was fighting for the chance to get Fire and Ice by Robert Frost, because it's like 4 lines long, and then meanwhile there's this one kid who thinks he's trying out for fucking Hamilton, fucking performer of the class, picks the longest declamation he could find. God, that shit was inhuman. Nah, I miss poetry day. Anyway, at first glance, The Road Not Taken seemingly conveys the message that it celebrates making unique decisions, because the narrator wound up apparently taking the road less traveled. As such, we might relate this to our dear old travelers, by maybe making the argument that the road the Sibiling went down is now the traveled one, given they already went down that path. So when Aether comes across this metaphorical fork in the road, he may either end up following in the footsteps of the Sibiling, walking down the same road they did and perhaps joining them on their journey, or they might make a non-conforming decision and pick the other road, the less traveled road. However, here's the interesting thing about this poem, is that there isn't a road less traveled. Both roads are equally weathered. Quote, though as for the passing there had worn them equally about the same. With this more nuanced understanding of the poem, its actual purpose comes to light, and it's to reflect on the outcomes we attribute to decisions we've made in the past. With the understanding that the roads have always been equal, let's reread the last stanza one more time. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages whence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. It's talking about the meaning we retroactively ascribe to the choices we make. While in the moments the choice to go down one road or the other may seem trivial, in hindsight the narrator admits that one day they will look back at this moment and say it's mattered greatly for where they ended up. So now with the misunderstanding cleared up, let's once again apply this to our dear old travelers. What's interesting is, Both the siblings may have already come across this fork in the road, and it was the Caribert quest. Remember, both siblings experienced this ordeal almost in its entirety, and it was at this moment the siblings' paths seemingly diverged greatly.
And it seems closely connected to Clothar Alberich's son, Caribert, and what happened to him. And yet your sister never breathed a word of this incident to me. I wonder, was that the moment that she decided to go down this path? Indeed. Clearly, this series of events sparked a long period of deep contemplation. This was where it all began.
And now, while one may argue the paths they walked following this incident were clear, the sibling joined the Abyss Order and the traveler just kept traveling, I'd say, hang on a second there, Nicky. Let's not forget, the sibling continued to travel with Dane after the Caribert incident. It wasn't until much later they joined the Abyss Order. So, similarly, while we are continuing to go about our travels normally, what we are actually doing is walking down the same checkered path. And let's not forget, all throughout the quest, we began to experience doubts regarding the gods' actions, and, unfortunately, we even sympathized with those Conrians.
Please, God! I beg of you.
Now, with that said, because the road not taken is in parts about seeking justification for the choices we've made, we actively see the twin doing this, first in their confrontation with us.
You shouldn't team up with this man. He is my enemy. A curse of immortality was laid upon him to forever wander the wilderness, while he watched the people he was supposed to protect turn into monsters of the Abyss. Until the Abyss has engulfed the thrones, my war with destiny will see no end.
And next in their plan to cure the hilly bitches.
What are the chances of succeeding?
Theoretically speaking, approximately.
Forget it. Even a 1% chance is enough. For too long have we dwelt in the Abyss. Surely they would rather return to the natural cycle of life and death as soon as possible than continue to exist as they are, without a shred of dignity. They cannot be made to continue paying the price for those so-called sins.
Furthermore, the twins as a whole seem to have similar journeys going on. They're going through the different nations, we're sometimes meeting the same people like we did with the fucking Aranaras, and the twin is confident that by the end of the siblings' journey, they will share the same reason and justification they have.
I have already traveled through this world once. Once you reach the end of your journey as I did, you will see for yourself the true nature of this world.
But as for now, they aren't on the same page. Now again, we haven't gotten far enough in the traveler's journey to see them justify whatever choice they may end up making as a result of this incident, if it is indeed the proverbial fork in the road as it was for the sibling. It could be, something else yet to come to the traveler that furthers them on the path of their sibling and thus the Abyss Order. But if that moment ever arrives, we'll have to wait for it. But I mean, given the timing of this animation, it could very well be something happening in 4.7. Poetry aside, the odd thing about this image is the presence of the Inteyvat Flowers, the national flower of Conria. It's also apparently a flower that blooms in the traveler's homeland. Given this image shows the two together in a tranquil space, just vibing, this should be before their journey to Teyvat, which was marred with catastrophe. But if that's the case, it really calls into question the nature of the Inteyvat flower. Is there really another world it blooms, or do the travelers indeed originate from Conria? But if that's the case, then explain the Universitas Magistrorum quotes, "Oh, almighty sovereign, the Universitas Magistrorum has provided the predictions you requested. The two stars have been captured by the world's gravity after a lengthy orbital period. Today their paths shall intertwine once more." This is either extremely colorful wordplay, or to Conria itself, the twins originate from outside Teyvat. I guess we'll find out soon, and hey, not knowing is part of the fun. That sure as fuck seems to be miHoyo's philosophy.